Good evening. Hope you're all doing well. Today we're learning Maseches Kesubos Daf Ayin Aleph, and up until the Mishnah on Ayin Beis Amud Aleph. On Shabbos, I know there's a lot going on Shabbos. We're going to be keeping our regular time, which is an hour before Mincha. Mincha 6:15, Daf Yomi is 5:15, and then we'll learn the rest of Ayin Beis. As you can see, Ayin Gimel Amud Aleph is particularly short, so but Ayin Gimel Amud Beis is particularly long. We'll figure it out, as we always do. We try not to fall behind. That's basically, we haven't fallen behind yet. We're almost 1,000 blot in. Let's keep it that way. We're starting at 1,000 is the fifth day of the month of Tishrei. Yeah. But who's looking forward to that? I mean, yeah, it's very exciting. We should do something. We need to, what's the pasuk? May Alfei, your Torah is as beautiful as. Yeah. We have to write a song. I don't know. What? I don't know. What day? What's the first night is Monday night. So Monday night is Aleph. Sunday night. So Monday's Aleph, and Tuesday is Beis. Wednesday is Gimel. It's Friday. So we'll learn it on Shabbos. So we'll do something Shabbos afternoon. Okay, we're on the top line of Ayin Aleph, Amud Aleph, and we had been learning in our Mishnah. Our Mishnah is at the opening of the parak in regards to various cases of a case where a woman is madir herself. And if a man is madir es ishto melahanoslo, we spoke about this case in the Mishnah. If a man doesn't want to give food to his wife, so we said the Tanakama said ad lamed yom, and then Rabbi Yehuda says chodesh. So last I checked, math major in the back, chodesh and lamed yom are exactly the same. The last sentence I heard you say is 1 + 1 is 4. That's all I know. I just don't know what you do all day, but you certainly don't sound like a mathematician. Sitting to your left, however, is a physics expert, so I'm sure he could work out the math. So the Gemara asks the obvious question, Rabbi Yehuda, Omer B'Yisrael Chodesh. I don't understand. Hainu Tanakama. What's going on here? The Tanakama says Lamed Yom and you say Chodesh. So the Gemara gives two answers. Amar Abaye, you're absolutely right that in that regard, when Rabbi Yehuda is making a delineation between a Kohen and a Yisrael, you're right that the number is 30 is the same. But says the Gemara, Amar Abaye Kohenes Asala Shmuna. You're right that in regards to the Yisrael in our Mishnah, 30 days is no different. But for the Kohen, the halacha is different. And we're only bringing it for the Kohen. But you're right, the Tanakama would hold 30 days just like Rabbi Yehuda. Rava gives a different answer. Rava Amar, a more mathematical answer, I guess, which is Rava Amar Chodesh Malei v'Chodesh Chaser Yikabeinayu. Come on, there's differences. The one who says Chodesh, whatever the Chodesh is, the one who says 30 days is 30 days and not 29. So we know that we vacillate between 29 and 30 days because, as the Gemara elsewhere says, that the lunar month is 29 point, whatever the decimal points are. Great. So we have to keep offsetting. So a few times out of every 19 years, we offset the calendar by a month to offset. So in our calendar, it's exceedingly accurate, more accurate than the Gregorian calendar by many decimal points, actually. What the Chachamim knew back in the day before NASA could calculate exactly how long a lunar month was, well, we are way more accurate than the risks of the Gregorian calendar. Okay, so these are the two answers about the stira between not the stira, but the similarities between the Tanakh and Rabbi Yehuda. The Gemara says, Amar Rav. Rav gives a qualification to our Mishnah because we had said in our Mishnah that there are times that a woman would have to get divorced if she was put in a certain neder situation. Lo shanu ela b'mefarish. All the guidelines are all the times that we give a grace period of a month or whatever it is. All the grace periods exist only b'mefarish where the husband is explicit about his neder. However, aval bistam, if this neder was made without any time parameters, then yotzi la'altar ritain ksuba, marriage is over. So one has to be very careful in the heat of the moment if you're making an angry neder not to end your marriage. Okay, says the Gemara, Shmuel Amar, no, I disagree with you, Rav. Rav thought that it was only when it was a mefarish, when there was a grace period. Shmuel Amar, afilu bistam lo yotzi. Even if the neder was made bistam, where he didn't specify a time frame, still he says we have our regular grace periods and the divorce doesn't kick in right away. Shema yimtza pesach l'nidro, because maybe he'll find a way to get rid of his neder. What actually is going on here? So the Gemara says maybe he'll have some contrition. He didn't really mean to. He was angry, so he said harei halai, whatever the language was. He said something very sharp. So it says the Gemara, maybe he'll come around and then he'll go be matir neder. We're about to do ataras nedarim, so that's what he's going to do. He's going to go be matir neder. Says the Gemara, that's great that you're quoting this machlokas between Rav and Shmuel, but we already had this machlokas, exactly the same one. Where did we have this machlokas? It's not. If a man is madir his wife from tash mishamita, it's done in a roundabout way because we know that a husband cannot be madir his wife from anything that he has a chiyuv to give her, but let's say she says it and he says, and he just doesn't respond. All right, so that's different. Whatever the case may be, so that the grace period before divorce is 2 weeks. We saw a little bit of this about the frequency with which one is obligated to be available for intimacy. I was at a bris this week, and the secular woman said, "Isn't it a biblical law that couples are supposed to be intimate Friday night?" That's very. It's amazing that people know. It's a lam d'shashayla. So it is a lam d'shashayla. Is the mitzvah vona? It is a mitzvah d'oraisa. Is the frequency as quoted in the Gemara that we just saw a couple of days ago? That's an onas talmidei chachamim, as we refer to it. But that's how we view it. But really, Ladina, that's even more makel than the twice a week, which is standard. So it's Mr. Lechora, the actual number that she was discussing was not Teoraisa. But in those cases, I always use that as a platform to share the godless of Torah. So you should just know that this is a chiyuv for a husband to a wife, and it's not the other way around. Working in a way that matches the opposites of our desires, and not necessarily the desires that you would have thought. That's for those who think the Torah is always barbaric. They have to learn about how the Torah really speaks about women, because then they will not say that anymore. Anyways, the Gemara says we already had this machlokas Rav and Shmuel, and 10 lines down, Rav machlokas b'mefarish. The machlokas over there is when he's explicit about how much time he wants to restrict himself from his wife. Aval b'stam yotzi la'alter v'yitin kesubos. So Rav is holding the party line like himself, which is that when it's stam, when there's no time frame, then there's no grace period, and therefore the wedding is over, the whole marriage is over. Shmuel Lamar, like he said earlier, maybe here too, maybe he'll be contrite and he'll turn around. So why, asks the Gemara, why do we have the same machlokas Rav and Shmuel quoted in the case of our Mishnah, which is a case of mizonos, and here as well in a case of tash mishamita? And the Gemara answers, tzricha, quarter of the way down, third of the way down. If we would have only had the machlokas Rav and Shmuel in regards to the new case that we learned in the case of Tash Mishamita, I might have thought, but Behahika Amar Rav, there Rav was more strict, Yishum Delo Efshar Beparnas, because you can't take care of what your wife needs with another person. If you want somebody else to feed your wife food, no problem, but you can't have somebody else be intimate with your wife. That's an Isser Doraisa. That's an Eishes Ish. There's so many things wrong with that. Aval Baha, the Efshar Beparnas, but when it comes to food that another person is able to feed her, so then Ema Modele, maybe we then would have said that he agrees to the opinion of Shmuel. The Itmar Beha, and if he would have said the other way around, that we only had the machlokas of Rav and Shmuel in regards to a case of mizonos, maybe Bahakam or Shmuel. There, Shmuel was lenient mishum de'afshar b'parnes, because somebody else is able to feed his wife. Aval be'ahi with tash mishamita imamodele the Rav. Maybe he would agree to Rav's strict line. Therefore, tzricha, we needed to have the machlokas in both cases, so that we realize that Rav and Shmuel's machlokas applies in both cases. Okay. That brings us almost halfway down. Ayin Aleph Amud Aleph. Tanan, the Mishnah writes, "Hamadir is ishto shelo sitom echad mikol haperos." A man is madir his wife that she's not allowed to eat oranges, that she's not allowed to eat apples, whatever the case may be. The halacha is yotzi b'yitin ksuba. I asked my wife if this is like the equivalent of, we were discussing it, like we know that there's abuse, in marriage. So when you tell your wife that she's not allowed to eat apples, you're like, all right, hold on, we're calling shalva. Like the whole thing is all over and done. Is this the Gemara standard for mistreating someone? Interesting. I said next time you write an article, you can say the Gemara is very sensitive about making sure we speak nicely. Okay, I don't know if I'm right, but I did tell her that. So the Gemara says in such a case, Yotze b'yitin ksuba. What's the Gemara lacking here? A grace period. It doesn't say 30 days, it doesn't say 10 days, doesn't say 2 weeks, doesn't say anything. And the Gemara picks up on that. Where's the grace period? Bishlama le Rav. I could understand according to Rav. Sometimes there is a grace period and sometimes there isn't, like we just saw. Kan bistam, over here, in the case of the Madires Ishto Shalositom Echad Mikol HaPeros. So in that case, if it's bistam, if there's no time frame, then Rav is the shitaso that we would say that they should get divorced. And kan b'mefarish, by us, by our previous cases, by Mazonos and by Tash Mishamita, in those cases were b'mefarish. But says the Gemara, Ela Shmuel, according to Shmuel, who says that there's always a grace period, even when it's stam, even when the madir is not making a specific amount of time frame on the Isser. Kasha Shmuel should at least have a grace period of some kind over here. Why don't we see one? Says the Gemara, you're right. On 4 lines before the wide lines on Ayin Aleph Amud Aleph, what must we be dealing with over here? We're dealing with a case where she's the one who said that I am never going to eat an apple again, and he kept his mouth shut because Savar Rav Meir, who knows by his silence, it's as if the injury that he got on his finger. She was closing her mouth and he stuck his finger in between her teeth. You're a fool. Take your hand out of her mouth. That's other than she won't bite you. So it's kind of similar. Like she's chomping and he's a fool. So who's guilty? So the Gemara says, we assume that by his silence, because he could have been Mefer Neder, the Gemara says this is the case that we're dealing with of Shmuel, which is that she made the neder and he stayed silent, and it's his fault. It's his responsibility, and therefore Yotzi v'yitain ksuba. He still has to pay the ksuba. Asks the Gemara. Hold on one second. The Sava Rab Meir who knows saying etzba bein shineha. Does Rab Meir really hold that it's his fault? That really, when she's biting down and he decides to stick his fingers in her mouth, that it's his fault? In other words, here too, she's the one who made the neder. Is his silence the bad thing, or is her comment the bad thing? Says the Gemara, how can you say that Reb Meir holds that way? After all, Tanya, the Brisa writes, Ha'isha shenadra ben nazir. If a woman says about herself that she'd like to be a nazir, the shama baila, her husband hears velo heferla, and he doesn't undo her neder. First long line, Reb Meir v'Reb Yehuda Omrim. The two of them say, here's what they say, Reb Meir, he nasna etzma bein shineha. She, the one who said that she'd like to be a nazira, that's her fault. His silence? Don't open your mouth in the first place if you don't want to become a nazir. Why is it his problem that you open your mouth? So here again, it's a little bit of yin yang. It's a little hard to really determine whose responsibility it is. But we tried to answer up for Shmuel by saying that Rav Meir was of the opinion that he holds that it's really his responsibility to undo the neder. What about over here by Nazirus? We see that Rav Meir holds that it is not his responsibility to undo the neder because he nosna esma beit shina. She's the one who caused the problems. Lefichach, this brisa continues. Im ratza habal lehafer yafer. If he wants to undo the neder, he can. V'im ratza v'im amar ifshi v'isha nadranis. I don't want to be married to this woman who keeps making nedarim. She's playing with fire, and therefore teitze shelo b'ksuba. So Rav Meir won't even hear of it. So of course we have a question, but the brisa is going to finish up, and then I will re-articulate the question. 3 lines into the wide lines. That was all Rav Meir and Rav Yehuda, but Rav Yossi and Rav Elazar omrim hu nosein etzba bein shina. They say that it is his responsibility to undo that neder, and he is the guilty party if she ends up being a nazira. Lefichach, therefore, because it's his responsibility, imratza abal lehafer yafer. And v'im 4 lines down the wide lines. V'im amar ifshi b'isha nadranis yotze v'yitain ksuba. So here he would have to, if he wants to divorce her because she's an isha nadranis, he can divorce her. But because he was the one who had the capabilities of undoing the neder, he has to give her a ksuba. So what do we see from here? We see a stira in Reb Meir. Our Gemara presented a kasha against Shmuel, and we answered it by saying, don't worry, he holds like Reb Meir, and Reb Meir blames him for not undoing the neder. Yet in regards to Nazirus, we see that that's not true. We see that Reb Meir is saying that it's her fault, not his. Says the Gemara, 5 lines down into the wide lines, 2/3 of the way down, epuch. Switch the shitas around so that we don't have to worry about Rav Meir being soser himself. Rav Meir, Rav Yehuda Omrim, who knows, saying he's the guilty party. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Elazar Omrim, he knows not. Great. So we solved the problem for Rav Meir, but the problem is we created a new problem. The Sava Rabbi Yossi, he knows not. According to this new breakdown of the 4 shitas, it says 1 line above where we are that Rabbi Yossi is he knows not, that it's her fault. How can you say that Rabbi Yossi holds that she is the one who's responsible? It's not. Rabbi Yossi Omer in our Mishnah, Ba'anius shelo nasan kitzva. Ba'anius, that if a woman is mudar hana, that she's not going to put on any perfume or take any makeup, so that's based on him. Shelo nasan, it's based on him. Shelo nasan kitzva. So we see that Rabbi Yossi is now soser himself with this presentation. That we're not really sure. Does Rabbi Yossi say that when she makes a neder and he doesn't undo the neder, who's guilty? So this just happened to me at work today. I thought someone was automatically getting all of my flight receipts sent straight to them. I find out today none of them went to her. It wasn't my fault, wasn't her fault. It was the travel agent's fault. Oh, so who do we, so she was upset at me and I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about. I thought you had all the receipts. We just missed each other. So here it's kind of similar. Who's really the one who's culpable? Who's guilty? She makes the neder and he just doesn't say anything. Whose responsibility? So Rabbi Yossi is now soser himself. And the Gemara says, Ema, you're right. Let's restructure the machlokes again. Amar Ema, says the Gemara, Reb Meir, Reb Yossi, Omrim hu nose. Reb Meir and Reb Yossi, they say that it is the husband's responsibility. Reb Yehuda, Reb Elazar, Omrim hi nasna. And this is again great for Reb Yossi, but again we created another stira, which is within Reb Yehuda. How can you say this? So Reb Yehuda hi nasna. Reb Yehuda is going to say that she's the one who's responsible. That's not true. That's not. Reb Yehuda Omer be Yisrael yom echad yikayim. And when we would look back in that Mishnah, that would show that it is his responsibility and not hers. And thereffor, Rabbi Yehuda is soser himself. So says the Gemara, two answers. Ema, it's not 2 against 2. Ema Reb Meir v'Reb Yehuda v'Reb Yossi Omrim Huno, saying that he's the one who should have undone the neder. Reb Elazar is the lone man standing on the other side of Omer. He knows not her. It's her responsibility. It says the Gemara Vim Tim Tzalomar Zuge Zuge Ktani. Maybe we have, and this is a strange principle, that all of our machlokos have to be even. It has to be in pairs. So says the Gemara, if that's true, then Ema Reb Meir Reb Elazar Omrim Hinasna and Reb Yehuda Reb Yossi Omrim Hunosein V'astama Delo Reb Meir. And the Stam Mishnah in this particular case is not like Reb Meir. So this breaks one of our general rules of Stam Mishnah Reb Meir. So this is really the tension that the Gemara is feeling is it better to have a machlokas 2 against 2 instead of 3 against 1? But to violate the general principle of Stam Mishnah Reb Meir, that's a Shas concept that we would have to discuss at length if we had the time. 5 lines from the bottom, says the Gemara, going back to our Mishnah. The Gemara says we had learned in our Mishnah, and if you want to look back, our Mishnah, in the final case of our Mishnah, spoke about a case where a woman was madaris ishto, a man was madar his wife, that she couldn't use any makeup from all of the different makeup, and if that neder came out of his mouth, so there's the machlokes tanoim. The Tanakama says yotze v'yitin ksuba. So they have to get divorced, but she gets her ksuba. And Rabbi Yossi says it depends. If she's poor, so then she has to get divorced if there's no time frame given, and if she's rich, then the time frame is 30 days. So the Gemara, 5 lines from the bottom of Ayin Aleph Amud Aleph, says as follows: the Savar Rabbi Yossi be'anius shalom nasan kitzva alma baal masi mefer. If you're saying that it's all based on him, the fact that she is in this neder situation, and it's all based on him, alma baal masi mefer, then maybe he then can undo this neder. Well, hold on one second. There may be no neder to talk about in the first place. Why not? Because Uraminhu, 4 lines from the bottom, Elu Dvarim, or as the Girsa changes it to Elu Nidarim, the following types of Nidarim Shahabal Mefer are the types of Nidarim that a man can be Mefer. A man can't be Mefer every neder, but he can be Mefer the following: Dvarim Sheyesh Ben Inui Nefesh, things that are afflicting for her soul. What does that include? Im Erchatz, Im Lo Erchatz. She says, if I shower now, or if I don't shower now, then I'll never shower again. Right? She has these like structured types of Nidarim. So that he can undo. Im es kashet, im lo es kashet. So the Tanakama holds that yes, she's allowed to make this neder, and these are the kinds of things that we're allowed to undo. Look at what Rabbi Yossi says. Rabbi Yossi, es kashet means to like use makeup, those kinds of things, to use makeup, to use oils, to use perfumes. Rabbi Yossi, nope. Those are not things that she's allowed to make a neder on. Those are not things that he's allowed to undo. Rabbi Yossi, no. When it comes to the cases of im erchatz, im lo erchatz, and im es kashet, im lo es kashet, Rabbi Yossi says, ein elu nidrei inui nefesh. These types of nedarim don't fall into the category of nidrei inui nefesh, and therefore the husband cannot be made for neder. And what does he say can be made for neder? The following are things that are part of nidrei nefesh. Shelo ochel basar. A woman says, I'm never going to eat meat again. Shelo eshte yain, I'll never drink wine again. Shelo es kashet b'vigdei tzivonim, that I'm not going to wear colored clothes again. So what we have over here is a stira within Rabbi Yossi. Our Mishnah seems to imply that he is the responsible party if she were to take on a neder that she can't wear makeup. Yet we see over here that he's not even allowed to be made for neder on that, because he says that's not a case of nidrei inui nefesh. So says the Gemara, what must be going on in our Mishnah where we say that he can be made for neder? So says the Gemara, a very subtle and sensitive topic. The Gemara says, things that apply between him and her. The Gemara is speaking in such code, there is no way to know what the Gemara is talking about without Rashi. And Rashi says, Dibur Hamaskil on the second line, she makes a neder of some kind, not to remove pubic hair that would cause for challenges with Tashmish Amita. Rashi says she makes some kind of neder about a medication, Hamashir Esaser, that softens or that removes the hair. So it says the Gemara, that's what we're talking about. And according to Rabbi Yossi, that's a case where he can be made for neder beino leveino. That's fine. Says the Gemara, that's great, but it doesn't work for everyone. Hanicha, that only works. That only works according to those who say that a husband is allowed to be mefer on those kinds of things, but not everybody says that way. Says the Gemara, where do we see that there's a machlokes about this as to whether or not a husband can be mefer neder in regards to dvarim beino leveino, about the challenges of Tashmish Amita in a scenario where there's too much pubic hair. So it says the Gemara, that's a machlokas. The Itmar, Dvarim Shebeinu Lebeinu, Rav Huna Amar Abal Mefer. Rav Huna says he's allowed to be mefer neder. Rav Ada bar Rava Amar Ein Abal Mefer. Why? Shalom atzinu shual shemeis ba'afar pir. The Gemara gives a mashal. You never find a fox that dies in its own home. So this is a mashal of some kind. Is that the kids, or what it means is that they'll figure out how to have tashmish amita, even if she doesn't remove all of the hair that is creating for challenges. So that's what the Gemara says is going on here. Ayin sham in the Rishonim. Says the Gemara, therefore, we're back to where we started, which is what was the case of Lihis Kashet in our Mishnah? It can't be the makeup because that doesn't work according to Rabbi Yossi. It can't be Beino Leveina because that doesn't work according to the Shita of Rav Ada bar Ava. Ella says the Gemara, Hacha b'mayaskin. On what case are we dealing with in our Mishnah where a husband can be made for neder? 10 lines down on Ayin Aleph Amud Beis, the Gemara says, Kegon de talinu lekishute b'tash mishamita, where she made an interdependency on two seemingly unrelated things. She says, if I wear or don't wear makeup again, I'm not going to have hana from you in Tash Mishamita again. Kigon b'Tash Mishamita de Amra ye'aser hana as tashmishcha alai. I'm going to accept an iser hana from your tashmish with me. She says, if I put on makeup. Kide Amar Rav Kahana. And this aligns with one of the shitas of Rav Kahana. To Amar Rav Kahana, hana as tashmishi alayich. If she says you can't get hana from me, she says this to her husband. That doesn't work. Kofa, we force her to override her neder. It's actually not even a neder; it doesn't even count. She cannot say that. Umeshamashto, they can have tash mishamita. But if she says that she wants no hana from tash mishamita, not that she's not letting him have hana from tash mishamita, but if she says of herself, hana tashmishcha alai, I will accept upon myself. She says that she will not get hana from tashmish with him. There, yafer, and that's our Mishnah. That's the case in our Mishnah where Rabbi Yossi says that they can be made for neder. When she makes this comment of, yes, there's nothing wrong with for you to have tashmish with me, but I've accepted upon myself, she says, to have no hanon tashmish shamita. So there, the halacha is yafer. Why does a husband have to be made for neder? It's technically mutter for him to be with her. It's just usher for her to be with him. So that's her problem. She should solve that problem. So it says the Gemara, because it's not right. Even though out him, there's no nedarim on him, but you can't. It's like machil trefos biyadayim. If I give you non-kosher food, so from me, I didn't eat the food. You're eating the food. It says the Gemara, he can't have tashmish amita with her when she created an isser for herself. It's not his isser. You're right, but it's her isser, and they're married. So it says the Gemara, therefore he has to be made for neder, and that's what's going on in our Mishnah. The Gemara asks a third of the way down below, tiskashit b'teyaser. No. So then tell her that that she shouldn't put on the makeup, because that was her condition. If I put on makeup, then the tashmish is going to be, don't put on the makeup, but don't shower. What do you want me to tell you? Just that's your problem. Says the Gemara, that doesn't work, because imkain karula menuvelas. That'll be disgusting. That's not mechubad. People have to shower periodically. Says the Gemara, what about the flip side? Let her put on the makeup, v'tiskashet, and then she'll trigger her own isser, v'teyaser. And we know, no, not a big deal. She can fulfill her neder. She can put on her makeup, and they won't have tashmish shamita for either, according to Beis Hillel, a week, or according to Beis Shammai 2 weeks. Problem solved. It says the Gemara, that's only true. When can you say that? Hani mili, the parameters of the machlokas of Beis Shammai, Beis Hillel only apply hecha to adra ihu. That's when he makes a neder on himself. However, and in that case, the Savra, she's of the opinion that mirtach ratach ilavai, he's upset at me, so he made this short-term neder. Within a couple of weeks, we'll be back to normal. Aval hacha, here it's a little different. What was the way that our case was in our Mishnah? Hacha de nadra ihi v'shasikla. She made her comment. She said about herself, hare about herself, that she doesn't want to have any hana from tashmish hamita with him. And he just looks at her and says, okay, whatever. He could have been Mefer Neder, but he wasn't Mefer Neder. What does she infer? Savra, she learned from there, the ishtik, by his silence, because he didn't shut down that Neder with Hafaras Nedarim, misnahu desanili. She says he must hate me, and therefore they're going to get divorced. Okay, says the Gemara about this last case, Rabbi Yossi Omer be'anius shelo nasan kitzva. We had said that in regards to a woman who is poor, whose husband made a neder against her that she should not benefit from any of these types of besamim, any of these types of perfumes, that it was only going to be an immediate divorce if lo nasan kitzva. V'kama kitzva, says Rashi, 2/3 of the way down. V'kama kitzva, klomar im nasan kitzva. If the husband did give a time frame, ad kama lo kaifinan leilahotzi. Until when would it be that they can stay together with her limitations before they're forced to get divorced? So look at the breadth of these shitas. Answer number one, Amar Rav Yehuda, halfway down on Ayin Aleph Amid Beis. Amar Rav Yehuda Mar Shmuel Yud Beis Chodesh, 12 months. No makeup for 12 months. Rabba Bar Bar Chana Amar Rav Yochanan Eser Shonim, 10 years. Rav Chizda Amar Avimi Regel. From what it's unbelievable spread of different shitas. Just so why a regel? She came Benos Yisrael Miskashtos Regel. Everyone dresses up in their Yontif finest. Everyone looks great. They come in for Rosh Hashanah. They come in for Sukkot. They're dressed up so nicely. So that's considered a standard, and therefore it's regel to regel. And we had said in regards to this same neder about the makeup of Ashiros Lamed Yom for rich girls, 30 days is the maximum before divorce kicks in. Why? Because Maishna Lamed Yom, Amar Abai Shekin Isha Chashuva Nehenes Mereach Kishutel Lamed Yom. Because the smell lasts for 30 days. She sprays some heavy oil or perfume on her clothes. It lasts for about 30 days. And then it's time to rekindle. But she's wealthy. That's what she's used to. Those are the staples of her home. Says the Gemara 2/3 of the way down at a fresh Mishnah on Ayin Aleph Amid Beis. We're going to be learning until the Mishnah a little bit more than halfway down on Ayin Beis Amid Aleph. Let's continue. Hamadiris Ishto Shelo Telech Lebeis Aviha. This is the control-freak husband. You may not go back to your own home. Says the Gemara, Bizman shehu ima ba'ir, when her father lives in the same city, chodesh echad yekayim, the husband's parameters can exist for only 1 month. But once we get into the second month, shnayim yotzi b'yitin ksuba, and she gets the rights of the ksuba, and the relationship is over. Ubizman shehu b'ir acheres, if her father lives in another city, then regel echad yekayim, then it's not 1 month versus 2 months, it's one regel to the next regel. And Shlosha, we seemingly skip over 2. We'll discuss that in the Gemara. Shlosha yotzi v'yitin ksuba. And once they hit the 3rd month, then he has to divorce her and give a ksuba. Case 2 in this Mishnah. Hamadiris ishto shelo telech lebeis ha'avelo lebeis ha'mishte. Really controlling. Not only can you not have fun, you also can't go to a house of mourning. This guy's a real Debbie Downer. You can't even go to a funeral? Crazy. What's the din? End of marriage. Because he's locking her up. It's not the right way to do things. We'll see in the Gemara what this means. However, much as it's true that if he says this, that they have to get divorced, there is an exception to the rule. And that is that if he has a valid reason. If he had a secondary concern, and we'll see in the Gemara what that is, then Rishoy. Then he's allowed to place this restriction on her. Let's say that a husband says, I'll be mefer neder. Omar Lay says, I'll be mefer neder. However, al menashe tomri leploni masha amrisli, on the condition that you tell the secret that you just told me to somebody else. Oh, masha amarti lach, or that I said to you. Oh, shetahema mala ume'ara ashpa, or if you fill up the jug and then you pour it into the garbage. Yotze v'yiten ksuba. So says the Gemara, all of these ridiculous provisions, only then will I be made for neder, the marriage is over. That's not right. That's not the way we treat people. We'll see in the Gemara what's going on. Says the Gemara, the question that was foreshadowed already, Hagufa Kashya. We have a stira within the ratio, within the first case of the Mishnah. The case of the first Mishnah was where a woman was told by her husband, you cannot go back to your home. The Tanakama said it's 1 month is sufficient, and then it's Yitain Ksuba. And then the second Shita said, and this was really the problem, the second Shita said 1 month is fine, 3 months is not fine. Say, what's the question? Amris, you said 10 lines from the bottom, 5 lines before the wide lines on Ayin Aleph Amid Beis. Amris, you said regel echad yekayim. What is it implied from regel echad yekayim? That the husband's allowed to employ this restriction for 1 month. That implies hashnayim yoseh v'yitin ksuba. That by the time we get to the 31st day, entering into the 2nd month of this restriction, game over. They have to get divorced. Now he still has to give a ksuba. But a moment later, you said shlosha yotzi v'yitin ksuba. Then when they get to the 3rd month, that's when the marriage is over. What does that imply? Hashnayim yekayim. This is a stira. This is a stira. So what actually happens with 2 months? So the first answer of the Gemara, Amar Abaye, stop. There's really not much of a question. Seifa, the shlosha is really only talking about a kohenes. Rabbi Yehuda, it's actually going back to a reference to our previous Mishnah at the opening of Perek Hamadir on the beginning of the page prior, 2 pages prior, and Daf Ayin Amud Aleph, and that is answer number 1 of the Gemara. Rabba Bar Ula Amar Lo Kasha, there's no stira between the implications because kan b'redufa, kan b'shein redufa. One is where she's trying to run home to go see her father, and one is where she's not trying to run home. So whether or not we say the 2nd month is going to be divorce worthy is depending on how much she actually wants to be home. If she really wants to be home and he restricts her into the 2nd month, marriage is over. If she doesn't want to be home, then the 2nd month restriction is still unreasonable, but it's not yet grounds for divorce.
So We have a woman who likes her parents very much, and the husband says no doubt.
So up to a month, acceptable. 31 days, divorce. But if she doesn't like her parents, then up to 2 months is acceptable, and the third month is divorce. So the second month hinges on whether or not she has a good kesher with her father. That's what the Gemara answers.
But is that like if he's giving it sivui, or
It's
I prefer if you don't do it?
no, the Mishnah is talking about hamadiras ishto.
And then-
It's a neder. Yeah. I mean, it's just, we call it different things today. We call it you're being controlling, but it's different. But the language of neder is super halachic. It's not like hare alai X, whatever. That's we learned in the Gemara that making nedarim is really very dangerous, and one should be super careful about that. But
You don't put it on?
No.
No.
you can accept one upon yourself. You need dayanim to undo your nedarim. But says the Gemara, two quick drushas. What does that pasuk mean? Amar Rav Yochanan, this is a reference to marriage. What a great relationship with the in-laws. She's so excited with her in-laws, she can't wait to run home and tell her parents how great the mother-in-law and the father-in-law are. Halabai. It sounds beautiful. Says the Gemara, that you're called my man and not just a phrase of husband. What does this mean? This is like a bride who is in the home of her father-in-law. There's a difference. That higher level of relationship is what we are absolutely striving for. Starting at the very bottom line of Ayin Aleph Amid Beis, the Gemara quoting the Mishnah says, es ishto. We said that if a husband makes a neder against his wife about not being able to go to a base avil and not being able to go to a base mishteh, so then they're divorced. So asks the Gemara, my high. I understand when it comes to the base mishteh, that makes perfect sense. I got it. What's the holdback? I understand you're going to get divorced if you say you can't go out with your friends to shallots. That's very restrictive when there's a neder in play, and it's grounds for divorce. But a base avel, why would that be grounds for divorce if he was restrictive? So the Gemara gives a bit of a sobering response. The Gemara says, Tana lemachar hime. So at some point she's going to die. Ve'ein la beria, ve'ein kol beria softa. She won't have any friends to bury her because she didn't go to a base avel. Then they're not going to reciprocate. There's an understanding in communities that there's reciprocity. It's not always wonderful, but it is kind of the way the world turns a little bit. And if she doesn't go to any of the Chevra Kadisha, she doesn't go to any of the Levais or any of the Kvuras, she won't have anyone to bury her, and that's not acceptable. So therefore, even though a Beis Avel is not a party, but if a husband restricts her from going there, he's also making her burial down the road more complex. Ad kedei kach that they have to get divorced. That's a very sharp line. Good. Some say it's not sofda to get to be maspid, but vikadamre ein kol beria sofna. No one will actually bury her. The first one was sefed from the word hesped, and this is sofan. This next word is from the word burial. Says the Gemara 4 lines down. Tanya the Brisa writes, "Hi, Reb Meir Omer, my dechsiv. What does the pasuk mean? Tov laleches al beis avam mileches al beis mishteh. That it's better to go to the house of mourning than it is to go to a party. Ba'asher husof kol ha'adam ve'achai yitena libo. What does the pasuk mean when it says my ve'achai yitena libo? Dvarim shal miso. We're talking about. Excuse me. I have. So says the Gemara, what does it mean by Chayitena Libo? Dvarim Shal Misa. The pasuk is talking about when a person's alive, what should they do to protect themselves in death? The Safa Yispedune, one who gives a hesped will receive one when they die. The Kavar Yikbarune, when one helps burial, then they'll get buried. The Yadel Yidlone, those who wail will have others wail for them. I heard in the shiur today that this is where the word yodel comes from. Nice, no? Exactly. It's what Rabbi Resnick said in the shiur, that the word yodel here means to wail, and it was extracted from here, like many words in the English language. Like we say, you're such a maven, you're such an expert. Mavin, you have one who has deep under. There's a lot of words like this that have kind of caught on in modern parlance. Copacetic, colbaseder. There's like a lot of words that are very similar to one another. Okay, not for now, but this might be where yodel comes from. I don't know. Look at the etymology in a dictionary. For sure will not say daf, ayin beis. that if you are malave a mace, then they will be malave you. And titan yit anune, those who carry the casket, if you carry for some, then they'll carry for you as well. At the 2 dots, 10 lines down, if the husband had some valid concerns as to why he's restricting her from going to one of these places, then that's not grounds for divorce. Says the Gemara, my davar acher. What was his concern? The ex-boyfriend was there. These people are there. She's hanging out in the bars, and that's not. A husband is allowed to make a neder against his wife that you're not allowed to walk into a makom pritzos. Absolutely. She should probably do the same thing for him. There's nothing wrong with that. She shouldn't be in a makom pritzos, and that's not grounds for divorce. However, we have to qualify this. Amar Rav Ashi lo amran ela di ischazek. It has to be that there's a chazaka of pritzos. Lo ischazek lo koklamine. But if there isn't a chazaka of pritzos, then he is not allowed to restrict her from going there. The final case of the Mishnah that we had learned at the bottom of Ayin Aleph Amud Beis was as follows. He says, I'll be made for neder as long as you tell the secret that I told you. Says the Gemara, no v'tema. It's a big deal. Just say what the husband wants you to say. Who cares? Amar Rav Ashi, no. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, Dvarim Shel Kalon. These things are private. They're intimate. They're not things that are repeatable. Not everything is repeatable. This reminds me when I was in YU of the discussions of you come back from a date and you smell like cologne. You look like $1 million. Your roommate says, did you go on a date tonight? So you could pashut lie to him. Say no. Just wanted to dress up. You're not allowed to steal. You're not allowed to steal information from people. You cannot force information out of people. In this case, it was something that was private and it's something that shouldn't have been shared. So in that case, that's grounds for divorce. If he says, I'll be made for neder, but only if you tell that whisper that I told you, no, that's not right. We don't do that. What a shocking Gemara. The Gemara says, if he says that you fill up this container and spill it out, so then I'll be made for neder. So what is this talking about? Let her do the filling up with a bucket. Who cares? Says the Gemara, because it is a mashal. And it is a graphic mashal. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel shetamali v'nofetzes. That after tashmish hamita, when there is zera inside of her body, she should empty out the kli, as it were. She should orient her body in a way, as we've learned earlier in Shas Tivi Mishapech, that she should turn her body in a way where she doesn't conceive. Oh, I'll be made for neder as long as after tashmish hamita you ensure you don't get pregnant. That grounds for divorce. That's not right.
Is that my say wrong anyway?
It's not, because the Maaseh Erva Onan is when the zera is al eitzim va'avanim. That's the isra of masturbation. But here they actually had tashmish hamita. No, Erva Onan wasn't in tashmish hamita. It's dashmi b'fnim v'zorami b'chutz. But here that's not that case. They had tashmish hamita with Gemar Bia. They had tashmish hamita. But he says, I'll only be made for neder if you make sure that when we have tashmish hamita that you will orient your body in a way where you can't get pregnant, which is anyways a terrible birth control. But let's assume for the moment that that's what his condition. Grounds for divorce. Done. Just marriage is over. So says the Gemara, that's the shita of Shmuel. But b'masnisa tana, that there's a brisa which correlates to our Mishnah, which says no, this has nothing to do with the bedroom at all. It's shetamali asara kade maim. He says to her, I will be made for neder if you fill up this bucket 10 times. Dump it in the garbage. Totally different responses. So says the Gemara, hang on one second. I got it. Shmuel's shita is that this guy is being a jerk. And he's saying that after Tashmish Hamita, you have to be misapech, flip over in a way where you can't get pregnant. But what about the brisa? The brisa says that who cares? Go fill up the bucket 10 times, dump it in the garbage. Says the Gemara, we have to be very sensitive about the feelings of our spouses. Amar Rabba Bar Bachana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Ibnei Sheniris, Kishota. Not right. You can't make a condition that the only way that you'll give your wife a hafaras neder on what she did is if you look like a fool. So he says, go out in the public square and fill up the bucket 10 times. Go over, fill it up, dump it out. Go over, fill it up. You look like you're crazy. And the Gemara says grounds for divorce. And therefore, either way, either the shita of Shmuel, which is, whereas the Gemara had its language of shetamali benofetzes, where they would have tashmish hamita and then she would ensure that she doesn't get pregnant, or even a simple mundane task of filling up a bucket and spilling it. You look crazy. Both of those are grounds for divorce. Last little sugya for the night. Amar of Kahana, Madras Ishto Shelo Tishal v'Shelo Tashil, Napa v'Kabra v'Rechaim v'Tanur. A man who says that a woman cannot lend or borrow these different types of sieves and a mill and an oven, Yotze v'Yitain Ksuba. Why? Why is that grounds for divorce? Says the Gemara, Shemasiya Shem Rabbi Shchunaseha. You're giving her a bad name in the community as being cheap, as being stingy, and that she's not able to share anything. Tanya Nami Hachi, the Brisa says the same exact thing. If a husband makes a neder on his wife that she cannot borrow and she cannot lend out these various types of colanders, and a rechaim is a mill and an oven, because you're giving a bad name for your wife, grounds for divorce. Last short line on the page, and then we'll stop at the Mishnah. If she says the same thing to her husband, if she says the same thing about herself, but out loud to her husband. She says all of the same things, but this Brisa adds, and she won't even weave nice clothes for her kids. Teitze and shelo b'ksuba. She has to get divorced, but here she's the culprit, and therefore she is not going to get a ksuba because now she's making a bad name for him. So they're forced to divorce, and she gets no money. We'll stop right here. We'll pick up on Shabbos with Ayin Beis Amud Aleph at the Mishnah. Wishing you all a beautiful night.